My take on the electron transport chain of aerobic respiration. So let's start off with what aerobic respiration really is. Aerobic respiration is basically how we humans can turn glucose or nutrients into energy, ATP. Aerobic respiration has 3 different processes. These include the glycolysis process, the citric acid cycle, and the electron transport chain. And something that's very different about each of these is that glycolysis occurs in the cytosol, the citric acid cycle, and the electron transport chain occur in the mitochondria, and here I am drawing the mitochondria around the citric acid cycle and the electron transport chain. And you can also see that the glycolysis is not a part of the mitochondria. The electron transport chain's main function is to take high-energy electrons from the citric acid cycle and glycolysis. These include 2-NADH, 6-NADH, and 2-FADH2, and finish the entire process of aerobic respiration, which concludes to ATP. So let's get more into detail about what the mitochondria is and what its parts consist of. The matrix is the inside of the squiggly lines. The inner membrane surrounds the matrix. And the outer membrane keeps everything together. Let's also not forget that the inner membrane space is between the outer membrane and the inner membrane. As I said before, the electron transport chain happens in the mitochondria. More specifically, it happens in the inner membrane. After finally giving some background information, let's begin the electron transport chain process. Just to put some things into perspective, the upper part is the matrix, the lower part is the intermembrane space, and the actual chain is the intermembrane. As you can see in the intermembrane part of the figure, I left a few empty spaces. Those empty spaces are meant for the electron transport chain, which is formed by different parts. You can call these empty spaces members. So what happens in the electrons from full electron carriers are dropped off at different members of the chain. NADH is dropped off to the first member, FADH2 is dropped off to the member that appears to be behind the intermembrane. Soon after, the electrons continue to pass or move through the electron transport chain. As you can see from how I'm drawing it, it moves through one member to the next, to the next, to the next, until it reaches oxygen. Along the way, it releases energy as the electrons go through, until finally it reaches oxygen, and by that time, the electrons do not have any more energy to release. So right now, I'm going to be drawing the energy that has been released through each passing. And because of the second law of thermodynamics, which indicates that whenever there's a transaction of energy, heat is released, the released energy is part heat, which is why our bodies are warm. The oxygen and electrons combine with protons in this case, it would be positively charged hydrogen atoms, creating one of the outputs, which is water. The other part of the released energy goes back into the electron transport chain. The released energy goes back into the much larger members of the chain, which are being highlighted in orange, with the energy being into the larger members. They use as energy to participate in active transport, where solutes are pushed against their concentration gradient. The hydrogen ions set pure above and below processes are now able to pump through the large members. So the top portion of the figure consists of low concentration hydrogens. As it goes through the large members, it goes from low to high concentration because of the released energy. So we want to have equality in concentrations on both sides of the intermembrane. The high concentration hydrogens cannot pass back through the members, so they have to find another way to reach equilibrium. The only way for it to reach equilibrium is to go through the ATP synthase. The hydrogen ions go through the ATP synthase and it spins or rotates, and then it goes up, and it also produces ADP plus P, and that turns into ATP. So we started off with NADH, FADH2, and O2, and we ended with, or the products were ATP and H2O. We can also conclude that body heat was released as well. My name is Yana Galindo, and this is my take on the electron transport chain.